Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's never heard an album by Caroline Polachek before reviewing this album. I was doing this channel back in 2019 when Pang came out, but I just missed it. And ever since I missed it, I get a lot of comments. And I realized there's a certain kind of singer, in particular a female singer, in particular a kind of female singer in the indie pop realm that gets a lot of attention, that has a lot of very dedicated fans. We might even call them stans in the modern parlance. And she fits into this general grouping in my head. So I'm going to be reviewing her album Desire, I Want to Turn Into You. And I want to really talk about this kind of musician and maybe do a better job of naming her genre instead of just saying pop. Because the thing is, it's indie pop, right? But we messed up. As music, I don't know, journalists at some point came up with the term indie pop, and that really applies to indie music that has kind of a poppy feel. But what do we do about musicians like Caroline Polachek, who are just pop musicians who happen to be indie? You know, in some ways it's like in the 90s when alternative rock became mainstream. You know, what are we going to do when Pearl Jam sells out the Foxborough Stadium? Not that they would play there because of Ticketmaster, but what are we going to do when the alternative is the mainstream? What do we do with that term? And so what I want to do is I want to come up with a whole new genre name for this kind of artist. Indiva. A pop indiva. Let me explain. Diva is traditionally, like many terms that refer to women at all, a pejorative term when it's applied to women in daily life, saying that they're acting special, but diva is an opera term that actually just refers to a singer with great power, right? So it's not actually supposed to be a pejorative term. It's an empowering term. So if we're in the realm of music, a female singer that's a singer is a diva, that works. So my idea is to mix together the word indie and diva because that's who these singers are. I'm thinking of Charlie XCX, Carly Rae Jepsen, Bjork, Ethel Cain, Wise Blood, Kim Petras, maybe even some outside cases like 070 Shake or Arca or Sophie. An interesting case is Dua Lipa, someone who appears to be indie pop who then just became pop. And that's part of what makes indivas interesting, is that the fact that they're indie is random. Whether, you can go from being a just pop diva, just period, like Dua Lipa is, and maybe her next album doesn't sell so well, but she'll still maintain that same fervent fan base, the kind of fan base that Caroline Polachek has. So Carly Rae Jepsen starts off with a big hit, and then she's now indie, Rebecca Black. So I think there's something to this group and this fan group, and it's not new either. I call them, I say that these pop indivas have a very strong stan culture. The term stan itself comes from the song Stan by Eminem with the chorus by Dido, who is sort of one of these pop indivas anyway. You see behind me Suzanne Vega, we're going to be getting to her later. She's always been that way. But the thing that separates them from straight pop is just whether or not they're popular. That's it. And I think that's interesting. I think that's powerful. And I think that's worth studying because it's not the same thing for most genres of music. If things are pop, it is an intentional decision to sell out to be more popular. So what do we do with all of these underground pop stars? Lizzo. Is she still going to be on top in 10 years? Ariana Grande. Is she still going to be on top in 10 years? It doesn't really matter for them because in 10 years, if they're not pop divas, they're pop indivas. Maybe the greatest example of all this is Kylie Minogue, who's able to kind of just go between all those things and be pop and mainstream and not, I don't know. So let's talk about Caroline Polachek. First of all, what do you think of that term? Pop indiva. It's maybe a clumsy portmanteau, as J.W. Stillwater would say. It is a clumsy portmanteau, but I think it's clever. I don't know. Who is your favorite pop indiva? Who did I miss in my long list? The only criteria is they have to be female singers who make music that could be construed of as pop. That's why, maybe Arca's on the edge because her music is so agitating, So what about Caroline Polachek? I had a hard time with this album because the first time I listened to it, I didn't particularly love it. I didn't dislike it. But definitely the second time I listened to it, I started to love it. And then the third time, I couldn't wait to listen to it. And then I was going to record the video yesterday. I listened to it 3 times. I felt like I took all the notes I needed. But I wanted to keep listening to it. So what does that tell you? Like any good pop musician, she gets under your skin. She has great charisma in her voice. She does a lot of great things with her voice, but the way it's produced, it never quite feels like it's that annoying thing where it's just like, listen to her voice. You know, it's subtle. Her writing is interesting because, unlike many other pop divas, she doesn't appear to be talking a lot about, like, the themes don't appear to be about womanhood. At least not on the surface of it, okay? Underneath, I'm sure, I mean, everything about our identity is reflected in everything we do, right? But it doesn't feel like an empowering album, like many pop and diva albums do, nor does it feel like it's meditation on sexuality or sexiness or anything like that. It's really just super poetic, but not just poetic, prose poetry. So prose is poetry that doesn't rhyme, right? That's all it is. And it's interesting because when you have prose poetry, you have to be really confident. Because when you want people to know that you're writing a poem, if it rhymes, everyone kind of knows, okay, you're writing a poem. But what she writes here is very interesting, quite deep, easy to misconstrue, and not easy to decipher prose poetry. So I think I'm getting it. I think I'm getting it, all you Polachek stans. That she has this ability to sing very well, and she uses it with restraint, and then she writes these lyrics that are very deep and not easy to immediately approach. The production here is by a guy named Danny Harley, who is along with A.G. Cook. I guess they're friends and producers, and if you don't know A.G. Cook, he's the guy primarily who produces Charli XCX. So there's kind of this interesting dialogue that happens in my head between these two different pop and divas. They do seem to be, on other sides of the Atlantic. Caroline Polachek is from Connecticut. Obviously Charli XCX is from England. They're both like these interesting, strong voices with these producers who are friends. Apparently, though, Danny Harle produced the song Anthems by Charli XCX, which is probably my favorite song of COVID. Except for Imagine by Gal Gadot. That's my favorite. Besides that, I think it's a really great song. And again, initially I was a little bit underwhelmed, but what was it that brought me to appreciate the production on this album and to appreciate the album in general? It really was the close listening. And that's the thing, is that sometimes when you listen to an album a second time, it's just getting used to it. And that might be the case with some of the pop hooks, we'll talk about those in a second. Wanna turn into you, hey, hey. 1 second, Sky. We're not ready to start singing Desire I Wanna Turn Into You. So just calm down, Sky. Don't make me edit. But it's actually these little production details. And in particular, almost every song contains what I just call vocal coolness, where there's something interesting done with her voice. Either it's doubling of her voice, it's an effect on her voice, a tripling of her voice. Sometimes it's just the way that she chooses to sing. There are these little tiny flourishes that almost like a nice big beautiful painting. You might gloss over some of the details when you're just observing what the subject is, and then you go into little details and you realize the expression on the turtle in the corner is absolutely gorgeous. That kind of thing. So let's get to an example of the album. Okay, let's start off with the song that I can't stop singing, Welcome to My Island. Or Welcome to My Island, as I pronounced it in first grade. Now this is also produced by Daniel Nigro, who's the guy who does Olivia Rodrigo. He's the guy who does Kid Crow. What's his name? My daughter's favorite. What's that guy's name? Oh my God, she's going to be so mad. Anyways, the Kid Crow guy. How do I forget his name? I've done like 3 videos about him. Anyways, a very interesting sort of up-and-coming producer who... I even know that the guy who sings Kid Crow is from Georgetown, Texas, okay? So why I'm blanking on his name. You can tell me in the comments. You go ahead. After you tell me who's your favorite pop and diva. By the way, he might be a male pop and diva. Not for nothing. But it's interesting because I associate Daniel Nigro with a very capable integration of rock and roll aesthetic into modern electronic pop. And that's what the Olivia Rodrigo album is, and it's just absolutely spectacular for that, which we hear a little bit here. But I still think that most of the credit for the entire album has to go to Danny Harley. And what this song does really well is it sets out the atmosphere and the thematics of the album perfectly. It starts off with what can only be described as a siren's call. Now listen, I haven't looked up a lot about this album. Very clearly, she's pretty educated. I have to think that this is all a reference to Odysseus and to the Odyssey. I don't know, but this feels to me, if you don't know the story of the Odyssey, the sirens are these beautiful women who sing and they draw sailors to crash on their island, and then do they eat them? I don't know what they do to them. I don't know if it's like snoo or what kind of situation it is, but it's not good. They don't live, right? And the way they draw them in is with their beauty and with their voice. So the whole song, all the lyrics are all about, welcome to my island, you're not going to leave. So it feels like she might be talking about being a sort of toxic partner in a relationship, but it's also this kind of interesting, kind of dangerous appeal, a dangerous, seductive appeal. Seductive, sort of Latin root of se, adducere, to draw towards oneself. And so the song starts off with just this howl that just sounds like you are on a boat, and the lyrics talk about an ocean, and we're thinking about an island. You are on a boat, and you hear, ah, and then with her on the front cover, like on a subway, like on a beach, and she's in a bathing suit, maybe, and she's on her hands and knees. She's trying to be sort of seductive, and she wants to turn into desire. And then the whole thing just kicks right up to this fully awesome, hey, 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 which, to be fair, is biting Simple Minds, Don't You Forget About Me, the closing song to Breakfast Club. Simple Minds, that's a good trivia. That's the name of the band who did that song. Hey, 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 just a straight bite, but the rest of the song isn't like it at all. So here we have this kind of villain. This almost feels to me like someone is doing one of those, like Wicked, one of those Broadway musicals where it's like, but what if the bad guy had a complex, deep story that we think is interesting? This almost feels like it's the primary song of the hero villain of the siren. The Odyssey, told from the siren's perspective. More interesting than Polyphemus. That was the sound of the oven in the background, by the way. My wife is making roast vegetables. It's exciting. My son had his tonsils out, so we're just eating too much ice cream in this house. She has these great vocal yells over these guitar lines, and dang, down. And then she speaks. She speaks over the verse, kind of this cool draw. It's, look at the palm trees. I hope you like it. You're not leaving. And this is what I'm talking about, those cool vocal effects. The cool vocal effects she's able to put on here, or I assume Danny Hurl is putting on, or maybe Nigro is putting on, is a slight vocoder effect. Just slight. I didn't hear it until the third time, okay? But then once you hear it, you're like, oh, and you look forward to it. And then we get to the chorus. As some people may know, if you watch my channel, I sort of suffer from existential insomnia. So unless I'm listening to a podcast in my ear, I can't go to sleep because I start thinking about not existing. It's just, during the day it doesn't bother me, but at night I can't go to sleep because I get upset thinking about not existing. Like, what does it mean to not exist? Okay? That's just what I think about at night. And when I'm in that state, I often have a song stuck in my head. And instead of really focusing on life or death, I use that awake energy and I just sort of get stuck on this song. This is a Cant Sleep chorus. This is one of those choruses that is stuck in my head last night and the night before. And so I'm kind of sitting there, I'm thinking, well, if I don't exist, I guess it doesn't matter. But then what does it mean? Did it matter that I exist at all? Do I believe in an afterlife? I guess I sort of do. That's just kind of hope. Hey, to my island. Oh my God. Like, you just get totally a desire. Hey, 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 I want to turn into you. So then, I'm still awake, but I'm feeling better. It's a Cant Sleep chorus. This great little hi-hat flourish at the end of a line. It's using a lot of these 80s tricks, 80s guitar flourishes, but it's really well done. It's really modern. It doesn't feel like it's just trying to ape old sounds. The second verse settles in these nice arpeggios. Like, I had the whole thing going in my head right now while I'm talking, which is a good sign. A little bit of a rock bit. Then there's this like Blondie style rap bridge Like she raps the way Blondie raps, the way Debbie Harry raps on the song Rapture. Sort of intentionally not cool, intentionally very white and female. I am my father's daughter in the end. He says, watch your ego, little girl. You're so smart and so talented, but now the water's turning red. And it's all your fault, it's all your mess. And you're all alone and can't go to bed. I guess that's a little bit of rhyming in there, isn't it? Most of the album's in prose, though. So it's interesting. Like, I don't know anything about her. I don't know about her life story. I don't know much. I know this much. But the idea of, like, tying into her father, and it's interesting, and watch your head. And there's a lot of blood in this album. A lot of blood. A lot of things turning red. And then just, this is a great bridge, a great hard guitar lead. And I'm just so into this song. Each time I listen to it, I'm so into it, and kind of an unexpected string outro. Oh, no. Wait, that's not true. That's in the next song. I'm just so into this album and into this song. And is this chorus the highlight of the album? You can tell me that too. Once you've smashed the like bucket and subscribed, I'm trying to get to one more subscriber than I'm at right now, and you can help me with that. Does it, like, is it the best part of this album, or is it just the catchiest? I can't tell. Next song is called Pretty Impossible. Me feel English? That's impossible. And here I found a couple quotes about the album that I think are interesting and help to elucidate things a bit. Apparently she says this was a cool experiment where they were trying to write a song that has no verses or no choruses. Which is cool, but she should have talked about Suzanne Vega. If you don't know the song Tom's Diner, it's an amazing song. You've heard it 1,000 times, but you don't know it. A really interesting song. And there's a remix in the 90s where they put like this funky drummer underneath. And this song is all da 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 da, and then there's like a whole funky drummer in there. So it feels to me like this might have been an unintentional echo of that great Suzanne Vega song. But again, I mean, her vocal chops are just amazing. The way she sings this line, I can't afford that kind of free. Those are the kinds of little things that pop up that I just hold on to, and this is what makes a great album, pop or not, is the little moments that you look forward to hearing. And then she says in the chorus, how does it feel to be so rich? And this is where it's interesting because the little that I read about her biography immediately alienated me from her, because the way she described her life, or the way her life was described growing up primarily in Greenwich, Connecticut, that's like the one of the richest suburbs in the world, right next to Wilton, Connecticut, where I believe Kenny Beats is from. Anyways, just places I know, because I grew up with enough money to have access to places where people had tons of money, and places like Greenwich, like Connecticut, like that's the most privileged. That's where the 1% raise their kids, right? So, as I always say, wealth does not negate talent, right? Daft Punk, they went to the same high school as the president of France when they started. Okay, like it's not a question. There's a long-standing tradition of people with wealth have been the people who have enough freedom to pursue art, and therefore they're people who make great art. And so we should never be prejudiced against a musician because they have a lot of wealth. But it does get in your head when it's like, and then I spent some years in Japan. I'm sort of picturing this sort of like, and then I went here, and then I went there. So it's interesting that she's addressing this right here. How does it feel to be so rich? Because presumably this is not talking about her being a big pop superstar, but just that's how she's been her whole life. To which I say, good. What I would like is if every single trust fund kid, every single person who is born to wealth takes that and does something creative with it. Okay? Then don't become an investment banker and build and get a job at the same bank where your mom works, or get at this firm where your dad works. Just become a social worker. Okay? Do something important with your life. Become a YouTuber, okay? That's how the world gets to be better. Take your privilege and do something meaningful with it, as opposed to growing it, more blood and red and velveteen and kind of rambling. The thing is, what I will say about the song, and I don't know if this is good or bad, but if it's trying to be rambling and all over the place, the regularity of this drum loop is almost oppressive and keeps everything super anchored, so it never feels like it's going anywhere, like other than just being steady. This was the song with the unexpected string outro to hits into the next song, Bunny is a Rider, which according to her is about being unavailable and that we are all Bunny, which is cool. One of my best friends, his nickname was Bunny. Nice guy. This is a great song because it really sets up the pacing of the album. There's like this bass and this whistling. We needed kind of a funky moment to break up the rest of the songs. It makes the whole album have a feeling of movement, especially the second listen. I really appreciated this weird sound. There's a weird like baby sound in the back. Reminds me a lot of Timbaland and his production for Aaliyah. And the song, If I Had Your Love. Just cool having a baby. And then there's hiss. There's a lot of hiss. You might hear the oven in the background right now. It's that kind of hiss. I really like this out there production. Maybe even some DJ scratching. What is it about? I can't really tell. Don't rub my neck. Does she say don't rub my neck? I got this thing right here. It's called Tech Neck. I don't know if you have it too. It's from looking at the phone too much. It's this one little spot. And I always want someone to rub my neck. I'm like a dog. You know how dogs always want you to rub their ears? That's how I am. Why would you say don't rub my neck? Layers and layers of kind of weirdness, but I will say, again, when we talk about this album with restraint, it never goes into full hyperpop, which I thought it was going to with the next song, Sunset, produced by Sega Bodega, one of my favorite sort of modern producers, producers of Does a lot of stuff with Shy Girl, another Indiva, perhaps a little bit more on the extreme side. But this song was the most disappointing because I was expecting something more, and listen, Sega Bodega, the first name, I believe, is a reference to Sega, the video game company. So I'm already thinking about video games. And I know that the soundtrack to Ocarina of Time, all the music is inspired by real music. So the Gerudo Fortress, with its beautiful guitars and sweeping sounds, is imitating music from Spain, much like this song is. But I swear to God, all I could picture was riding around on Epona and yeah, and diddle-in, diddle-in, diddle-in. So I don't know. That's just me. Maybe you're there too. Maybe you also got strong Gerudo Fortress. I played the song for my kids who played Ocarina of Time with me, and they'd be able to go, is this the Gerudo Fortress song? I don't know. Maybe I'm just wearing my ignorance. Okay, I might have Shakespeare behind me, but I'm still just a big old dork. I will say though, even though I have such high expectations for Sega Bodega, and this song felt like it was a stylistic exercise in Spanish guitar work, maybe kind of flamenco-ish, maybe even a little bit of Rosalia influence, I don't know. I do really like the melody of the chorus, because then we come back to another siren song in the middle, a real siren acrobatic, a beautiful part with this, the castanet rhythm and the gorgeous voice. So it is a good song, but I'm disappointed because when I hear Sega Bodega is producing something, I expect it to be at the very top. And this might be at the very top, but it's of a style I don't like as much. Then we get to Crude Drawing of an Angel. Great title, very intriguing. She said that was having jokingly invented the word scorny, which is scary and horny at the same time. I invented the word torny, which is tired and horny at the same time. Married people in the comments, tell me you know what I'm talking about. So I like the idea that she invented this word, and that's what this is. I don't really quite get what the correlation is there. But I like the song a lot. Bell sound. Again, I was a little bit rough on Sunset, but I like it, the flow of the album, each song having slight variances in style. This one has a lot of percussion, a very deep voice. This is where we start to hear a lot more of the cracked voice. That kind of cracked thing. And I grew up in the 90s, and there's a lot of pop and divas, actually now I think about it, who sang like that, and popular singers who sang like that. Again, the difference between a diva and an indiva is just random. So I hated that. I hated that sound in voices, and so I'm now getting used to it. I do like at the end of the chorus how it kind of trails off into the verse. It's very kind of sparse and desolate, which I like. And it has this beautiful thing of like camera 1, camera 2, and some really strong lyrics. Draw your blood, so much blood. Draw your breath, skip the whites of your eyes, and if you wake up till you watch me, draw your wings from your back. I'll not be shy, no, I'll be gentle with you. Red light, camera 1. Do you see what I'm saying about this whole prose that she has going on here? Draw your blood, draw your breath. Skip the whites of your eyes. So this is interesting because it's sort of like drawing, because it's a crude drawing of an angel. So it's also like drawing blood and drawing breath, and you can't draw blood and you can't draw breath. This is, I would argue, a sort of Shakespearean play on words, which we're going to get to later. Shakespearean play on words, where it's not clear if this is drawing blood or drawing blood, like you're getting a blood test. Draw the wings from your back. And it's just like tearing the wings out, like that scene in Black Swan, the Aronofsky movie with Natalie Portman, you know, like where the wings start popping out of her back when she becomes the Black Swan. Or is this drawing the wings, right? She's playing with these words. Obviously, she's playing on the multiple meanings. We then get to the song, I Believe. Listen, I am very upset that the singer Sophie died. There's another great pop Indiva. I never got a chance to review her music before she died, and her music was one of those random things that popped up before I started doing this channel. Just, I happened to discover that song Face Shop, and I loved it, and I played it, and I drove my kids nuts, and I really thought it was great. And I didn't know the importance of Sophie at the time. So I like that the song is dedicated to Sophie. I don't particularly care for the song that much. It has kind of like a house feel, like house drums and house bass, and these nice kind of like vocal stabs, like ha 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 ha. I do like the church organ outro at the end, which is nice. The lyrics, now that I'm thinking about it, look over the edge but not too far. Didn't Sophie die from falling? Like, isn't that how she died? So is that like is this like dark irony, or is this, I don't know. Is that insensitive? You tell me. I assume that the overlap between Sophie fans and Caroline Polachek fans is a circle. So you tell me. Next song is called Fly to You, featuring Grimes and Dido. Two more Indivas. Not a big fan of this one either. Basically a jungle start. I keep thinking video game stuff, but the way the jungle says it reminds me of like a video game loading screen. I don't know. It starts off with Grimes' voice, which is okay, kind of babyish. There's cool guitar sounds here. I really enjoy Dido's voice. I've always enjoyed Dido's voice. I remember back in the early 2000s when my then brother-in-law was like, well, actually we weren't even married yet. The brother of my then girlfriend said to me, you know, like, I just heard the greatest song of all time, and he played the original song that Stan sampled, and it was like awesome. And then that song became big. Yeah, it was interesting. Nice kind of bells at the end. I like it when they all come together, but in general, I don't want other people. I want Caroline Polachek on this album. Next song is called Blood and Butter. Ooh, it's gross. It's a gross title. This is a challenge between me and Danny where we tried to contain an entire song in 2 chords. It's a pastoral psychedelic folk song. That's what Caroline Polachek says about it. I can't help it. See, once I got into the video game thing, I think this could work as like a village theme for a Zelda game. But then still, a nice voice and bongo. I really like the confidence of her voice. She has a lot of different like styles of voice all the way throughout the album. The post-chorus has these great kind of pulsing synth sequences, this great cool voice thing that she sings, "Where did you come from?" There's like bagpipes again. And another cool vocal thing at the end where the vocals are descending in rounds, so it seems like it's never going to stop. It's like what they call a shepherd's tone. You know, shepherd's tone is where things are either rising or descending, and you keep layering in another, so it sounds like it's going on to infinity. It's sort of a shepherd's tone, a descending shepherd's tone of her voice. It's quite nice. And what I want is to walk beside you, needing nothing but the sun that's in our eyes, paint the picture in blood and butter, holy water, fire in the sky. Hope drunk, ever asking. This, I really had to fight against my hatred of the cracking voice thing here. Almost jazz phrasing. This does one thing that I really like, which is it incorporates the chirp of a fire alarm. Now, a fire alarm, when it's low on battery, does this beep, and it cuts through everything. And it's intentionally made to make you annoyed so that you replace it, because it's dangerous not to have a functional fire extinguisher, fire alarm. And I remember at some point on my secondary channel, I'm going to do I'm going to do a video about the tragic fall of Adam Carolla, who's a comedian who influenced me a lot, but has become sort of a right-wing stooge. But he's very funny. He's maybe one of the smartest and funniest people that's ever lived. I'm sorry that he ended up being not a particularly good person in his political views, but I still stand by that. And one of the things that he would do is when he would interview people, people would call into his show, and he'd talk about how much you could tell just from listening. And that, like, people would call into his radio show with that chirp in the background. And it didn't matter what their question was. He would just hone in on the fact that you can live with that sound is a sign that you are not doing well, that you are not taking care of yourself. Like, that is like the absolute sign of total desperation and just giving up, that you're just willing to live with that sound. Chirp! You know, what's the longest you've ever lived with chirp sound? I've lived like a week. But there are people who live a month with that sound. You just don't feel like getting the battery, getting up on the step stool, and replacing it. And it's great because it builds tension, it builds anxiety. This is a really great song. I really like this song a lot. Apparently, this is an allusion to Macbeth. I did have to look this up. Apparently, hope drunk is an expression that Lady Macbeth uses when she's sort of confronting her husband. Hey, we had the bagpipes in the last song, and now Macbeth here. Scotland is all over the place right now. Scotland is so hot right now. Dawn is just a headspace, night is a feeling, hope drunk, ever asking, centuries come and go, they'll find our bones and yet they won't. I don't quite get what this means, but hope drunk is this thing where Shakespeare is talking about, like, you can't really drink hope, but it could also be that you're drunk on hope. So if you're drinking hope and you're hope drunk, then it means either you are trying to increase your hope or you are so blinded by your hope that you are ineffectual. Much like the drawing the blood earlier, this is a poetic technique where the words can mean multiple things at once. This is the most choral. We have the kind of like these strings underneath. There's another kind of siren lead of that voice, of the siren voice coming back again, singing from the rocks. Of course, the way Odysseus gets around it is he literally ties himself to the mast of the ship. This also reminds me, the melody reminds me a little bit of, is it Into the Unknown? What's the song from Frozen 2? Frozen 2 is one of the most underrated children's movies of all time. Way more interesting than Frozen 1. Great. Frozen 2 is great. If you haven't seen it, by the way, the next best thing is like probably my favorite children's song from any Disney movie ever. And I was saying Hakuna Matata months before the movie came out. Okay, that's how good Frozen 2 is. It reminds me a little bit of that kind of adventurous siren call. Next song is called Butterfly Net. Am I going to talk about video games again? Okay, I can't help it. Because once I start thinking about the video games, then I'm thinking Butterfly Net is a tool that you have in the video game Animal Crossing, which was very big during COVID. And there is a kind of post-COVID feel to this album, like there is to everything. So I don't know if she was playing that and woohoo, and she caught something with the butterfly net. It is an evocative thing, and there happens to be butterfly nets have been in the zeitgeist for the past couple of years because of Animal Crossing, but I don't know. Kind of a whispering, shaking sound, unexpected acoustic guitar, really good, strong bass here. I really enjoy it. What I like about this is there's lyrics about battles, and then later on there's almost like a martial sound with the, like as in militaristic sound with the snares. Very straightforward lyrics. There you were with your mirror shining the world over me. There I was in my butterfly light trying to catch your net. A beautiful image trying to catch a net with a butterfly. And then perhaps the other best part of the album is when the organs and the drums come in and there's a little thumb piano and organs and the drums are behind. It's actual rock. It reminds me a lot, very favorably, of the band Procol Harum. Whiter Shade of Pale is the song they're most famous for, really able to use organs in rock. Great scope. And then the end, there's all this like junky percussion. It's great. Actually, this might be the best song on the album. I can't tell. It's between this and Welcome to My Island. Welcome to My Island. Next song is Smoke. Kind of Enya-like, kind of an upbeat song. I enjoy the lyrics about like smoke from lava. So many voice cracks, cool layers of drums, kind of a poppy na-na-na-na-na thing here. The beat here, when my brother was in a band when I was in high school, he had a drummer who's now like one of the best drummers in the country. His name is Zeke Martin. Look him up. He's all over Facebook. He's seriously like one of the best drummers you'll ever hear. So funky, so good. But when he was a kid playing with the band, he would do this one beat way too much, which relied too much on the snare. So which is just a little bit too full. It's like a funky beat, syncopated, you know, but a little like too much going on. It's sort of one of the first funky beats you teach yourself when you're learning how to play drums, and it lacks restraint. And this is that kind of early Zeke beat. But still, great layers of production in the end with this wah na na. Then the album ends with Billions, a funky winding sound, bell-like sounds, very almost Alanis Morissette phrasing here. Lies like a sailor, but he loves like a painter. I don't know. I think I would rather sleep with a sailor than a painter. You know? Like, painters so up in their head with how great they are and their vision and stuff. I don't know. Whatever. I've never slept with a sailor or a painter. Have I lived? You know? Have I? Anyways. I really like it when you're 35 minutes in, so you got that. This is why I don't have a script. Because I wasn't planning on saying that. And after having said it, I kind of regret it. But guess what? I don't edit my videos either. So thank you for staying so long. How are you doing? What did you have for breakfast? Tell me in the comments. I made pancakes. Kenji Lopez pancakes. What I like about this song is there's an interesting interplay between largeness and smallness. Oh, billions, twisted manic, cornucopiaic. Oh, my cup overfloweth. Oh, billions. So it seems to be a song about like all of the like largeness, you know, cornucopia and billions. But then the bridge is like, I've never felt so close to you, which is a statement of intimacy. And it feels like this might be a sort of comment on, instead of it being the billions, instead of it being a Bezos billions, it's a Carl Sagan billions. If you don't know Carl Sagan was the Neil deGrasse Tyson's, before Neil deGrasse Tyson, great science communicator. He made the show Cosmos, and he would always talk about billions of stars and billions of galaxies and billions of this. And he wasn't necessarily doing it to make you feel small. Sometimes he was, but other times he was doing it as a way to sort of understand the vastness of this thing that we are a part of. So what I like about this song is she's talking about billions, which is a big word. And billions, the word billions has been destroyed by billionaires, these pig fuckers who have $1,000 million and they want to have multiple $1,000 million, okay? They're not going to demonetize me. It's 37 minutes into the video. So like the word's been obliterated by that. So this is bringing it back to the Carl Sagan billions, which is kind of a spiritual word, like a number so large you can barely even think of it. 1,000 million of something, you know? So I like this very much lyrically. I think it's maybe her strongest work. There's interesting things, like she sings super low, like, oh, whoa, 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 which is a bit annoying, or maybe not, or maybe I like it. And there's like a whole children's chorus singing. I think that's that sense of like the multitude and the singular. And it's many, many children. It sounds like many, many children singing about never feeling so close to you. These are my Patreons. They give me money. I haven't had a new Patreon in a while, so if you want to get on this list, go for it, you know? They give me money and I buy music. I don't know if I'm going to buy this album. I might. I mean, that chorus, I want to turn into you, and even that line, desire, I want to turn into you, that's great. Like the idea of like a lot of personification going on in this album now that I think about it. It's a deep album. It's good. Thank you to all the people who told me to review it. And feel free to tell me all the stuff I told you to tell me. Until next time. What a bad outro. Till next time, I'm going to go find a sailor. There's the camera.